right, we're in the home stretch. This jam-packed, incredible main day of the Sports Tech Nation 2020 Summit. We have 3 more panels. Our next is called The Change Imperative, Paving the Way in Sports, powered by Coliseum. And to moderate, we want to welcome in the Assistant Professor of Sports Communication and Media at Rowan University in New Jersey. Please welcome Dr. Yannick Fluch.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Thank you, Doc. Yes, great to see you. And joining Dr. Fluch will be in her 8th season with the San Francisco 49ers. Their Vice President of Human Resources. Please welcome Harpreet Basran.
Hi, everyone. So happy to be here.
Thank you, Harpreet. Great to have you with us. And our third member of the panel is the President and Managing Director at Special Olympics Europe and Eurasia. Please welcome David Evangelista.
Great to be here. Thanks, Josh, and a pleasure to meet you, Yannick and Harpreet.
Likewise.
All right, Yannick, take it away.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well, first of all, welcome, everybody. We're really excited to be here. Welcome, Harpreet and David. We actually haven't connected in person to the extent that's possible, so it's great to see some faces to the emails.
Yeah.
And of course, welcome everybody on the screens at home. So we have a couple of questions prepared, and I think this is going to be a really empowering and insightful panel. I would like to start by asking Harpreet and David, first of all, thanking them again for joining us to discuss the power of sport and driving change. I think it's a very important time to be talking about these topics. We are coming off of a year where we have seen unprecedented efforts in sports to engage on topics like driving change, diversity, inclusion, social justice. And of course, our session today is titled The Change Imperative, Paving the Way in Sports. So Harpreet and David, to kind of kick us off, can you please share with all of us what that change imperative means to you personally and how you've demonstrated that imperative in your work so far?
Harpreet, over to you first.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thank you so much, Dr. Yannick. It's a pleasure to be here with everybody. And I'm honored to be able to speak on this topic that I am also very passionate about. You talk about the change imperative. There's so much happening, and you're spot on. So much has happened this year, and given everything that's happened, and just reflecting on my own, being a first-generation Sikh American woman, there's so much going on that the change really has to happen. If we don't do anything different and we just continue the way that we have been, I feel we lose hope. I know I personally lose hope. So I think there's been a national spotlight on this, on the issues related to social justice that have been there before, but not like this. And I think if we don't do anything now, then I lose hope. So, what I'm trying to do is just something even as small as asking the question, why are we doing this? Are we trying to check a box, or are we really trying to do the right thing? And it's actually really interesting to see some of the responses I get back. Well, what do you mean check a box? So trying not to just do things for the sake of doing them and having a real purpose behind them has been where I've been starting. And I'll kick it over to David.
Thank you, Harpreet. I first off, let me echo your sentiments by thanking Dr. Yannick, of course, the Sport Tech Nation, for the very generous invitation. I'm thrilled to be here representing the largest social movement in the world dedicated to empowering athletes with intellectual disabilities worldwide. Special Olympics takes very seriously the platform of change. The over 250 million people with intellectual disabilities across the world have been asking for leaders, local, national, regional, and global leaders to change policies, change practice, change behaviors, change mindsets around the talents that this untapped population has had for millennia. What does the change imperative mean to us at Special Olympics? Well, for me and for many of us across the movement, be it here in Europe or Latin America or Africa or Asia Pacific or the Middle East and North Africa, North America, Caribbean, Special Olympics has a deep sense of urgency in our work, and that's part of what drives us to that change imperative. So much of the plight that faces the population of people with intellectual disability really hinders their promise. So we recognized as a movement immediately that COVID was going to change the marketplace in all ways: the ability to mobilize, the ability to mobilize resources, the ability to mobilize individuals around sport, be it single sport, team sport, winter sport, summer sport, indoor sport, outdoor sport. The change imperative means you have to adapt. And so for a population that has shown such grit and resilience to adapting to a world very unforgiving to them, the athletes of Special Olympics in many ways have been the authors and the architects of the new normal. They were the first to say, don't worry, home confinement is nothing new for us. They were the first to say, don't worry, we'll adapt to a new sports dynamic. We always have. In fact, to use the words of a mentor of mine, an athlete from Special Olympics Malta, Gilmore Borges, he said, being an athlete of Special Olympics puts me at great advantage during COVID. I know how to face moments like this. We do this all the time. And so I think it's really unique that people very much on the margins are the ones that really help us get to the center of that change imperative. And so I think adaptation and urgency are two very important themes in these times.
Awesome. Thank you, David and Harpreet. I really appreciate multiple of the points you're pointing out, especially this idea of focusing on the margins to get to the center. I think that is very important. In my own work, I was introduced as an assistant professor. That's probably the least exciting part of my work, even though it's my official title. But I also work as a consultant on DEI with sports organizations, mostly in the United States, but a little bit in Europe and across the world as well. And for me, it's been a really interesting time because, as Harpreet mentioned, sport, there is something unique about sport when it comes to driving change. And I think we're at a time globally in the United States for sure, but definitely also globally, where sports is more open in being taken on that role of a change agent. And of course, we know quotes like that of Nelson Mandela, that sport has the power to change the world. David and Harpreet, both of you work for very high-profile sport organizations that have demonstrated leadership for DEI, for social justice. David was getting into this a little bit, but can each of you tell us a little bit more about some of the work that your organizations have done to pave the way in sports, especially as it relates to diversity, equity, inclusion, and social justice?
Harpreet, over to you.
Okay, sounds great. Working in sports, this was my first time working in sports when I started with the 49ers, and I didn't really realize the magnitude of what this can do. I mean, where else can you get thousands of strangers into a stadium or arena and high five each other over a common goal? And it's a really beautiful thing to watch. And it took me some time to realize just how special that is and how we as an organization can actually leverage our brand and what we're doing to do good in our communities, which is nothing new to the organization, but it was just a newer concept for me. So some of the things that we've been doing and have recently started, we have some fellowship programs. We have one specifically that's meant for recent female graduates, and they rotate through underrepresented departments that are underrepresented by males. We also have some of our fan engagement programs. We created our first ever 49ers Pride group 2 years ago, which was really fun to see launch. We also have one, which is Women of the Niners, a fan group specifically created for women. Internally, we've been working on just interview processes and practices. I think many people have heard of the Rooney Rule, which is specifically used for coaching, but we've adopted that about 4 years ago throughout the entire organization. And we've 2 years ago started a diverse slate interviewing practice where we're not just interviewing diverse candidates, but our interview panel is also diverse, because there's no point having diverse applicants if all the people that are interviewing all look the same. So diversity of thought there. And more recently, specifically after the murder of George Floyd, and the horrific events that came after that. We've been doing some regular town halls with our staff. Our organization, specifically our ownership group, pledged to support organizations working toward racial equality and social justice. So they put out a $1 million grant, and we had, we went through an RFP process to find organizations that specifically focus on racial equality and policing, ending mass incarceration, and then educational and economical advancement for young Black and women. So those are just a few just high level things that we're doing and we've got a long list to go, but just what's happened in 2020 so far.
Harpreet, I want to commend your presentation. I think, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. And, I think all of us have to agree with you when we say so much is to be done. We must get started. Yeah. I should also mention that, I was, it's an honor to be sharing the stage with you as somebody who followed the Niners for most of my childhood. I'm part of the Patriots nation, but I was a big Niners fan as well back in the day. I think Dr. Yannick and Harpreet, and to all of our viewers, Special Olympics in its 52 years history has put social inclusion at the forefront of all we do. So Special Olympics breathes an inclusive air. We speak an inclusive language. We live an inclusive life. Everything we do is putting people of all abilities on the same teams. We believe that clinics should treat people, of all abilities, of all conditions. We believe schools should be places of a very inclusive welcome. We believe that policymakers should be taking the input of people of all walks of life, but really mean it. And I take very seriously that idea of Special Olympics is quite frankly the antithesis of checking the box. With over 6 million participating athletes with intellectual disabilities in 192 nations, checking the box is the least of it. We're checking the scores, we're checking the times, we're checking long distance runners, we're checking trafficking rates. This is a population that is quite invisible to communities all across the world. This is a population that regrettably faces for centuries the lowest health and education outcomes of any demographic. So we take the role of sport very seriously, and we also take the role of technology very seriously. And I want to just mention quickly, before I know sometimes these discussions can go off in different angles. To all of the viewers, and to you, Dr. Yannick, and to Harpreet, leaders in the field, leading voices, pioneers in your sector, by empowering individuals with intellectual disabilities through sport and through technology, you're actually getting a 2-for-1. By engaging this population in sport, you're giving them an opportunity to share with the community their true essence, their rights, their talents, their abilities. You're giving the community a chance to respond to that. Countless advancements have taken place in countries all around the world in the past 52 years, including my home country, the United States. But when you engage them and empower them also using technology, amazing things can happen. In fact, all I have to do is look to Special Olympics Israel for a big campaign that they put out online to ensure that athletes remained active during very heavy restrictions. I look to Special Olympics Italia, that implemented the first ever Special Olympics Smart Games, harnessing the intellectual power of a population often defined by their deficits. I look to Special Olympics Belgium, that actually engaged 7,000 athletes with intellectual disabilities through their virtual national games. When you put technology and sport together, what you have is a remarkable, powerful cocktail that elevates a population long on the margins. And I think it's something that technology can be very proud of. I think it's something that the sports sector can be very proud of. And I think all in all, both sectors stand to look at this population as a great opportunity to bring DEI to life in their companies and organizations.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, David, for sharing, and Harpreet too. We've focused on some of the positives, right, that sport can do so far. I'm a very positive person, but I do want to talk about some of the challenges that we faced in our DEI work. So again, for me, working with folks in sports, US-based mostly, I oftentimes run into roadblocks to DEI, especially when it comes to the lack of diversity in leadership ranks of staff, those decision makers. Harpreet and David, what are some of the challenges you have faced in doing the work that you do in driving diversity, equity, and inclusion in sport? And maybe more importantly, how have you addressed and overcame those challenges?
Great. You know, it's a great question that you bring up. And just like everything else, you know, we all have our challenges. One of the historic barriers for entry in sports, I feel like, is the lack of industry experience. So most hiring managers want to hire somebody who's got experience within the industry, which is good, and in some areas probably very just, but in others not necessarily. And when you really look around, you know, the NFL and those that are in the league, and just look at the reports, I mean, while some clubs have diversity, overall, as a general league, we have a lot of room for improvement. So if we're all kind of fishing in the same pond, where we're kind of just sourcing the same type of talent. So, you know, we first started by doing a lot of look into our analytics and kind of where employees are coming from and what skill set is needed. And so now it's really challenging our hiring managers to say, well, what skill set do you really need in order for this position or this person to be successful, and why? And do they really need to have experience in sport? So I use myself as an example, like, to work in HR, do I really need to have football experience? It's nice to have, but not necessarily. So a lot of it is just asking those questions, and really breaking through those barriers has been tough, because it's changing a mindset of people who've grown up in the industry that this is all they know. So coming in and saying, well, no, gosh, like, why don't we go look in some other industry, seems very foreign, but with time, I think I'll be able to break that barrier a little bit more.
Well, I think, you know, the challenges that we faced, Dr. Yannick and Harpreet, I agree with you. You know, a lot of times, thank God I didn't have to be an athlete to represent them. I should say, of course, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say that on the Sport Tech Nation. Thank God tech is in the name. Let me say this. There's a number of challenges. This is tough work. I mean, Dr. Yannick, you know, you've been doing this now for years. Harpreet leading one of the biggest brands in sports worldwide, especially in the United States. You know, if this was easy work, it would have already been done.
Yeah.
The challenges facing companies and organizations, really the global marketplace, of getting diversity, equity, and inclusion right, is something that, you know, is very much captured in the way that the first Millennium Development Goals of the United Nations ended. You know, the last goal was partnership. You got to do it together. You know, you need others to help you along, and others need you. You know, I think some of the challenges that we have faced in Special Olympics is, you know, the larger marketplace will shrug their shoulders and say, why? You know, it's only 3% of the population. They don't vote, they don't consume, they don't count. You know, so why? Well, when you lift up the rug, you recognize, you know, 4% of the global population packs such untapped potential economically, socially, in the arts, intellectually, not to mention entire family units. And all of us know people who have, you know, have family members of different abilities, and all of those families, by and large, celebrate. So we know that there's a big opportunity. I think the biggest challenge we have is not so much the what and the why. And Harpreet alluded to this earlier. A lot of times, companies, organizations, governments, when it comes to DEI, when it comes to inclusion, they will say, we know we had countless national governments that I've had the personal honor of working with have come saying, we know we have an issue facing the entrenched marginalization of this population. We know what the problem is. We know why it's important. We don't know how to fix it. And so that's the magic of the athletes of Special Olympics. They can teach you. They've taught me. They've taught countless others. They can, all of the startups listening on this platform, any organization, especially the startups in Israel or worldwide, the people with intellectual disabilities can teach you how to be equitable, diverse, and inclusive. They can teach you how to be tenacious yet compassionate. And they can teach you purpose. Harpreet mentioned that word at the very beginning. So, wherever there's an opportunity, we often try to say, hey, let us sit down and have the athletes of Special Olympics share with you some of their thoughts. And most often, Dr. Yannick, they are able to teach everyone how to do what is oftentimes deemed so impossible. And I think it has a lot to do with, the magic that comes with working with people who you may discredit, and then you realize, gosh, how wrong I was. So the challenges are there, but the solutions are there as well.
Absolutely, and one of the themes of our conversation so far is this idea of building community and building collaboration and driving some of those changes. For those of us who might run into some resistance, whether it's when it comes to engaging stakeholders on DEI or getting buy-in from leadership to drive DEI, one of the things that I always find myself telling the organizations I work with is that, DEI might not be in your job description officially, but if you're working with people, and both sports and tech are industries where you work with people extensively, then DEI is part of your job, whether that's officially part of your job description or not, but it should be part of your job. Harpreet and David, how have you engaged the various stakeholders you interact with in driving DEI action, and how do you get buy-in, especially from those who may be a little bit hesitant to engage in that space?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I wish I had a better answer, but I'm really fortunate to work for an organization where they're really passionate about this field, and they've supported it for years. So I don't have the challenges that most other organizations do with trying to get buy-in. I have the buy-in, and really what they're looking for is the how can we do this, and what can we do? And yeah, not 100% of people are on board. So for those that aren't, it's really kind of giving them a safe space to talk and to be able to share their thoughts and not feel like they're being judged because they're not on the same train as everybody else. So a lot of listening for those groups, but really it's trying to kind of slow down our pace because we want to do so much, and leveraging that power that we do have, which is not very common, as I talk to many other colleagues in the industry, where some people say they're passionate but really don't mean it, that you're not really sure. And I'm so incredibly blessed that we do. And so it makes my job way easier to work for an organization that truly believes in diversity, equity, inclusion. Now it's just leveraging others to kind of think the same way, which is not an easy task, but we can get it there.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Harpreet completely. Special Olympics takes very seriously this work. We haven't had any challenges engaging people, but I think for our line of work, Dr. Yannick and Harpreet, and to everyone, we operate in a spectrum of 192 nations, where supporting a demographic widely invisible and very much misunderstood. So diversity, equity, and inclusion means different things in different places. Being able to apply that and ensure that you get the desired results, and at the same time, gently, delicately, yet purposefully change the behaviors, or at least begin. As Harpreet said, we have to start. Special Olympics has done this with refugees. We started, part of our DEI work is reaching out to refugees with intellectual disabilities and those without. And most importantly, like Harpreet said, we're very energized. We believe the world is hungry for this. We believe that the world now understands, for all we've seen, why it's important. And so now the time is for all of us to come and help with the how. The what and the why is understood. The how is an ongoing creative process, and one that that I think we're all very happy to be part of.
Yep.
Absolutely. And I think we have about a minute left. So for my final question, I want to make sure that David and Harpreet have the final word. But if either of you in 20-ish seconds could just share a final thought, a final lesson learned that you want to leave the audience with, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, I'd sum it up and say you can't climb Mount Everest in one day. We can't solve the problem of diversity in one day, but you certainly need to start training and doing your part to get up there. And just staring at that mountain is not going to help. So grab your backpack, put on your shoes, and let's start the hike up there.
Agreed. I couldn't agree more. The last thing I would leave to everyone is, as you move down the important road of DEI, look no further than the movement of Special Olympics to help you put your DEI work very much into practice. You won't regret it.
Awesome. So I say, let's climb that mountain together, and we'll turn it over to our host. Thank you so much for joining us. It was great. And Josh, back to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Yannick, Harpreet, David, thank you so much. It's an inspirational panel there, judging by the message thread with the folks at Coliseum. That was one of the best panels we've had all day. Incredibly well spoken, and just an incredible message for all of us. All right.